Welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. This is episode 545. Pause, breathe, choose. I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility through this medium since 2005. Today, we are talking about this beautiful new book by Naz Beheshti called Pause, Breathe, Choose. So you're going to learn how to become the CEO of your own well-being, how mindfulness is the foundation of authentic self-discovery, how working for Steve Jobs influenced her, how to reframe the stress we experience, and much more. So you can follow along at kimberlywilson.com/545. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. Also, head on over to kimberlywilson.com/podcast and you can find out how to leave a review and more on all things podcast. And those of you who may be new to Tranquility du Jour, a big welcome. And of course, you can learn more at /new, kimberlywilson.com/new. That'll give you insights into our manifesto, our 5 tenets that really align everything that we do here at Tranquility du Jour. Also, make sure you are signed up for Sunday's TDJ Live Masterclass. Now, the live event happening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time is free. If you miss this live and you want to watch the replay, that is a $10 purchase, and that goes to Pigs and Pugs Project. So you're doing great things. Sometimes people will actually even get the replay if they join us, just so that they can have it to watch again and again. Also, save the date. July 10th is our mid-year virtual retreat. I have to say, last year was the first time I did one mid-year, really focused on mid-year, looking at the past 6 months and looking forward. And it was really, I think it's one of my favorites because it allows us, it's around my birthday, but also it just allows us to see like what's going on, what's working well, what needs a little reframing. So link to that in the show notes and a link to the TDJ Lifestyle e-course, which will launch this fall. And there's a link in the show notes to join the waitlist. All right. Now, without further ado, Naz Beheshti is the author of Pause, Breathe, Choose. Become the CEO of your well-being. She's an executive wellness coach, speaker, Forbes contributor, and CEO and founder of Prana Naz, a corporate wellness company improving leadership effectiveness, employee engagement and well-being, company culture, and business outcomes. Clients include Nike, JP Morgan Chase, Omega Institute, UCSF, Columbia University, and Stanford University. Naz also co-founded Rise to Shine, a nonprofit helping to alleviate the suffering of young children in Haiti. She lives in New York City with her husband. Visit her online at nazbeheshti.com. Welcome, Naz.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Well, congratulations on your new book, Pause, Breathe, Choose. Become the CEO of your well-being.
Thank you so much.
So tell us about the inspiration to write this book.
The inspiration came to me in a dream one night, a very vivid dream that I had back in 2014 when Steve Jobs, who was my first boss and mentor, appeared in my dream. And this was about 2 years or so after he had passed. And he appeared in my dream and told me that I need to write a book about how my first job at Apple really impacted my life and career. And I had only seen, even up to this day, only 3 times faces of people in the dream. Like I know who they are and who they represent, but I never actually see vivid faces until Steve appeared. And twice before was like people that were very dear to me, my grandfather who had passed, and then my mother's best friend who I grew up with, and then Steve. So it was, very meaningful, more so than any other vivid dream that I had. And his message was very clear and just very intentional. And so the very next day, I, took that dream to heart and I started to write.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love that story. And I find that so interesting, especially when it's like, no, I don't dream about people a lot. So this was, a unique experience. And, you credit Steve Jobs, of course, as being like a first boss and mentor. So tell us a little bit about your experience with him, because I feel like to so many of us, like, he's an icon, he's also an enigma, right? And so I'm curious what your experience was like.
My experience was very enlightening, insightful, and influential. I mean, it was my first job out of college, so I was young, and he really taught me all my business acumen and then, just the basics of like professional life and corporate America. But more importantly and more meaningful to me was that he taught me my biggest lesson when I look back, in hindsight, when I connect the dots, about how well-being drives success, because he was very ahead of his time, not just with technology and building Apple, but also with his self-care and knowing that when he prioritizes his well-being, then he's going to be able to have sustainable success building Apple. And when I talk about well-being, it's in the most holistic sense of the word, in that, he really had a daily meditation practice. He had, regular physical fitness trainer who he saw several times a week. He ate healthily. He had a sense of purpose and passion, which was building Apple. So very fulfilling career, strong relationships. So all of this helped with his, clarity, his innovation, passion, to sustain his energy and focus to build Apple. And I truly don't think that without all of that self-care and prioritizing his well-being and his mindfulness practice, that he would be the iconic visionary that he was. And Apple probably wouldn't be what it is today. So he really taught me the most important lesson in life. And so that's why I say my time there was so influential, and that he was my first boss and real mentor.
Well, and I love that you've really kind of incorporated this in, really, even in with your subtitle, right? Become the CEO of your own well-being. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what you mean by that?
Yeah. So when anyone and everyone can be the CEO of their well-being, and, regardless of your professional title. But when you consider your well-being like a company you run, well-being at its core is really about being happy and energized and healthy. And so it's about promoting good mental, emotional, physical, social, financial, and professional and environmental health and well-being. So in a nutshell, it's essentially about managing stress and building resilience. So it's well-being, being well in all areas of your life, like how Steve taught me by example, that he really showed up in all areas of his life, thriving because he took care of all those different departments in his life. So as CEO of your well-being, you have the chief decision-making authority, and you're responsible for your company's overall operations and performance, which is the CEO of your well-being, right? So I encourage listeners and readers in my book to, ask themselves how their well-being company is doing. So for example, are you performing at the top of your game and feeling happy, socially connected, and purposeful? And are all the different departments in your company, such as your career, relationship, social, and family life, your self-care and personal and professional growth, having a sense of purpose and life satisfaction, are all those areas running smoothly? And just really evaluate those areas and keep in mind and be mindful of how you can optimize your well-being in all those areas so you can thrive, essentially.
And so you start the book, part one, all about mastering mindfulness. And mindfulness is such a great concept and such a buzzword these days. So can you tell us a little bit about how you define it and why you think it's somewhat foundational? I mean, the fact that you started it right as part one of the book.
Absolutely. It is foundational, fundamental to my MAP method. And I'll go into that in a moment. But to answer your question about what, mindfulness is for me, is that really the practice, a consistent practice of mindfulness awakens your mind and your heart from autopilot. and enables you to experience life unfolding in the present moment. So it unlocks your ability to tap into your intuition and creativity so that you can receive new information and develop new perspectives with a beginner's mind and without any judgment. So in short, mindfulness is the presence of heart, unveiling your truest self and desires. And so when we're, in the present moment, we're able to make better choices. So the MAP method is my holistic framework, to live your best life. And as you said, master mindfulness. MAP is an acronym for Master Mindfulness, which is fundamental because the next step is apply better choices to manage stress and build resilience. But you're unable to make those choices and adopt healthier lifestyles and make better, choices both in mind and behavior if you're not mindful to begin with, and even realize that you may be in autopilot or you may be feeling stressed or overwhelmed or frustrated. And that's kind of how my pause, breathe, choose method transpired, because in order to make better choices, you must be aware to even take a pause and then take that mindful breath, which better equips you to make a better, more mindful choice.
Then, we move into write these 7 A's, which I just love. And there's adopt a healthy lifestyle, allocate play and recovery time, avoid unnecessary stress, alter the situation, adapt to the stressor, accept what you cannot change, which has been very important during COVID, and then attend to connection with self, others, world, and universe. So can you talk us through some of your favorite tools in a few of these A's?
Well, the first 2 are fundamental to the A's because you want to adopt that healthy lifestyle and allocate play and recovery time so that you're prepared. It's building your resilience reserves so that then you can avoid unnecessary stress when it's, something you're faced with. Or if you can't avoid it, try to alter the situation. Or if you can't avoid or alter, it kind of each one builds upon the next, right? Then you can adapt to the stressor and then eventually accept what you cannot change, whether it's the stressor, the situation, whatever it is. And then overall, attend to connection with self, others, world, and universe really kind of ties it all together. So you have that sense of connection, which is really important in terms of building your resilience reserves and also managing your stress. And especially we all feel it now during this pandemic when so many people feel isolated and just out of touch with not just other people in the world and being isolated physically, but even within themselves, because everything has shifted so much for everyone, so that connection is vital.
Well, and you also talk about, I love this kind of in the adopt a healthy lifestyle, the productivity trap, right? Which I think so many people can relate to. And so tell us A, what the productivity trap is, and then B, how do we avoid falling into one, and how can we kind of move out so that we can allocate more time for play and recovery?
So the productivity trap is a constant chasing of perpetual productivity through more hours and more efficient time management. And that when you're constantly on the go and just sacrificing your, for example, sleep or skipping meals or just not attending to your self-care at the cost of you trying to be more productive, then you've landed yourself in the productivity trap. So we can avoid the productivity trap by being mindful in the quality of our work instead of the number of hours that we're putting in, and being able to, most importantly, manage our energy instead of our time. So most people want to, manage their time more, but, what we can renew is our energy, and we can optimize energy, but time is a limited resource. We can't do much. We all have 24 hours in the day, and that's about it. We can't add more time, but we could definitely optimize our energy levels. And so the way we optimize energy levels is by being mindful of the people we surround ourselves with, the thoughts that we have, the actions that we take, the food that we eat. It's our sleep, not sacrificing our sleep, getting at least, 7 to 8 hours of sleep for most people. And so all of these things can either, optimize your energy and, or drain them, deplete your energy. So if we can optimize it, then we can gain more energy and get more work, essentially smarter rather than harder, because we'll be more productive and efficient and get more done in less time instead of trying to chase more hours in the day, which is not possible.
Right. I think that's such a great reminder, right? About time, there is only 24 hours, right? But energy, depending on how we treat our bodies and depending, of course, on what's going on in the world and our relationships, et cetera, that can be affected. And so it's like recognizing, okay, how much input are we doing to make sure that we have the capacity to do that output?
Absolutely. And always just checking in with yourself. Like after you've had a conversation with a friend or after you've eaten something, whatever you ate, it's like, did that energize me or did that deplete me? Like, how am I feeling now? So like a mindful self-check-in is really helpful, because once you start, for example, spending lots of time with someone who's depleting of your energy, or you're eating foods that, make you feel heavy and drain you, then perhaps you should, avoid those things and do things and surround yourself with people who energize you, because that all, ripples through your work, through everything, through, again, all areas of your life, your well-being company.
And what about this ACE method that you've created? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the ACE method is a new way of reframing stress. It's an effective way to upgrade both your mindset and your behavior. So the ability to distinguish between different kinds of stress, which there's 3: acute, chronic, and eustress, also known as ACE, allows you to perceive stress as a challenge rather than an obstacle. Once you understand the type of stress that you're facing, then you can identify the actual stressors and their source, and then take empowered action. So it's really a 3-step process. Acing stress using the ACE method through awareness, change, and empowerment. So step 1 is being aware of the signs and symptoms, identify the type of stress, and then the source of the stress. So that's all about awareness. Then step 2 is about changing your mindset. So choosing to reframe the stress using an upgraded mindset so that you can identify your options, or what I like to say, your opportunities, rather than considering them obstacles or challenges, both in mindset and behavior. And then lastly, step 3 is about empowerment. It's about taking empowered and effective action. So the goal is to make the most of the situation by moving between acute stress, which is necessary stress, and eustress, which is desirable stress, a good stress, while choosing to avoid the trap of chronic stress, which is the dangerous killer stress. And just knowing that we always have a choice, and what we are feeling and thinking could be acute stress or eustress, which we can use to our advantage and really harness the good stresses. Even when we're already experiencing chronic stress, which many of us are during this pandemic, it's still not too late to pivot and change course. It's about being mindful and changing our mindset around it and making the best of the situation. And that starts with our mindset.
Yeah, the piece with this, kind of as I think about mindset, right, is one of your chapter about altering the situation. It talks about kind of the inner coach versus the inner critic, right? Whenever you say mindset, I don't know why that comes to mind for me. But I'm curious, how do you encourage our listeners to get more in touch with their inner coach and quiet that inner critic?
Well, we all have both. Most of us have listened more to that inner critic. So like 2 dogs inside of you competing for attention, we have an inner coach, the good dog, and then an inner critic, the bad dog. And the inner coach represents positivity, eustress, and a growth mindset, while the inner critic represents negativity, distress, and limiting beliefs. And like we talked about earlier, the foundation to the MAP method is mindfulness. Now, if we're not mindful, we may allow that inner critic, the bad dog, to just dominate our life, right? And because we're not aware that it's actually an inner critic, and we aren't mindful to take control and actually give the inner coach more attention. So what's important is that, it's crucial to remember that the dog you feed determines the kind of life you lead. And that stems from mindfulness. When we choose to feed the good dog and view the world through the eyes of the inner coach, then we feel more in control of our life, and we view challenges as opportunities, not threats. So we can then harness the positive energy of acute stress and eustress, and then avoid that killer chronic stress, and then essentially see ourselves as continually evolving and focus on improving ourselves when we feed the good dog and starve the bad dog. And that, is just about taking that pause and taking that breath and choosing to listen to that inner critic so that we could eventually quiet and starve that bad dog.
And what about kind of this idea in each of these chapters, at least in part 2, you've got all these great kind of business hacks. And I'm curious if you have anything that you'd like to share with our listeners on, okay, how do we starve the bad dog? Always just sounds like, oh no, I don't want to starve the dog. But right, it's like how to not feed him as much as we're feeding the good dog, right? But how do you encourage people to do that? Like, how do we become more aware of which dog are we listening to in this moment? And what are some of your other business hacks that you share in the book that you think might be helpful for our listeners?
Well, I have a hack in there called Tame the Monkey Mind. So part of the monkey mind, I think that's in chapter 1, in the mindfulness, either 1 or 2. But that taming that monkey mind is similar in a way to taming that inner critic. And there's 2 ways to go about that. One is to just be mindful of that inner critic, and then realize that, oh, this is my inner critic, and I'm going to choose not to listen to it. Let me now replace. It's like kind of putting a positive lens on it instead, and choosing to replace it, the inner critic, with the inner coach. So instead of let's say the inner critic is saying you're going to screw this one up today, or, you're going to fail at this, or whatever it is, then the inner coach is kind of telling you the opposite of, no, you're going to be awesome. You're going to do this because the last time you had this presentation, you were awesome and remembered all the good in the situation, so that it's reminding you that you can succeed no matter what you do. So it's like coaching you through the situation, almost like coaching you through ignoring that inner critic. Now, if the inner critic keeps yapping and barking and won't stop, then sometimes it's actually good to just acknowledge it and be like, okay, I hear you and I'm hearing you. Because sometimes a baby who's having a tantrum, ignoring them doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And then you have to acknowledge them, right? And then they quiet down. So what I like to, say is to still, if you choose to acknowledge it, that's great, but just disassociate yourself with that inner critic by giving it a funny voice. So I say give it a cartoon character voice, like Scooby-Doo or Pepe Le Pew, something, a funny, just disassociated voice. It's not your voice. It's a cartoon character's voice, right? So that you can provide some space between you and that inner critic until it kind of just fades away. It almost becomes comical, right? You give it less weight. So one psychological framework that I love, RWID, relative weight of importance and duration, is something I use a lot and I share with my clients. It's what is the relative weight of importance that inner critic is sharing with you? And for how long has it been yapping in your ear? And how much importance are you giving to it, right? Is it something that you should be giving lots of weight to, importance and time? Should they be, that inner critic, be taking up that great real estate space in your brain, and you should be focusing on it so much or not, like just being aware of that and acknowledging that, and then self-correct or self-direct yourself based on, the answers to your check-ins, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I love the idea of like a cartoon character, Pepe Le Pew. Yeah, because it's, or like a name, right? It's like, oh, there goes Melba, or, whatever. It's kind of that name that you give to the inner critic. Now, one piece that you encourage, which we know is so important and yet so challenging, thanks to Steve Jobs to a degree, but is to disconnect to reconnect. Right. And so it's hard, these days, right, to step away from technology, to step away from the doing mode. And so how do you encourage our listeners to actually do that and to take that step?
Well, something that I've implemented onto my own phone, because it's easier to walk away from your desktop or laptop, right? And then you're physically away. But with your phone, or if you have an iWatch, or it's with you most of the time. So putting restrictions and boundaries, setting screen time on your phone. I don't have an iWatch, so I don't know if you could do it. I assume you could do it with that, or even taking off your watch. But I know with your phone, that's a good step, is to, if you don't feel comfortable totally turning it off, because you may have kids, or your boss might be calling you, there may be some emergency, you can disconnect from all the other like social media, email, like just set those screen times to disconnect at certain hours of the day. Or if you don't want to do it daily, which I highly recommend, implement a tech-free day, like a Sunday fun day, really truly disconnect, leave your phone at home, or, if you can't, again, leave your phone at home, just cut out all the apps, the screen time, use the screen time, so that you're disconnecting from your devices so that you can reconnect with yourself and with your loved ones, if you're choosing to be with other people during that time, so that there's no disruption, so that there's more heart-to-heart connection and eye-to-eye connections. Because often when we do have our phones, or we're at our desk and someone's trying to speak with us, our eyeballs don't even lift off of what we're looking at. We're just looking down at our screens, and not even giving the person right in front of us attention by looking at them in the eyes. So you're not truly actively participating and engaged in the conversation. So that's why I say, disconnect to reconnect, and really have those eye-to-eye, heart-to-heart connections.
Such a good reminder, right? Because it's so interesting how we'll be like out with our loved ones and we're all like looking down at our phones. It's like, really? Come on. But it's so ubiquitous.
I know. I mean, just even like, so I'm in New York City, and before COVID, when I would get on the subway, I would look around. I kid you not, and I did this all the time. I would look around the subway, and whether people were by themselves or with someone, every single person, no joke, like 99.99% were looking down at their phone. I was the only one looking at everyone, because I was not looking at my phone, because I actually get motion sickness. Like, I cannot look at my phone. Even if I wanted to, I can't in a moving vehicle. So it gives me the opportunity to observe other people. And what was everyone doing? Looking down at their phone. I mean, it's unbelievable how in public spaces you're basically sacrificing a potential connection that can be made with a total stranger, even just waiting in line, because everyone is looking down at their phone. They're not even aware. That's what I'm calling autopilot. They're just not even aware or in the moment of what's going on around them. And so I feel like that's also really a shame these days.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because I have a friend who's from Oklahoma, and her mother came to visit, and they were in New York City. She'd moved to New York City, and they were on the subway. And she's like, my mom was like smiling at everybody. It was just creeping people out because nobody looks at each other, And there's her like Oklahoma mom going like, hi, So this is so funny. So the 3 Ps, can we touch on those real quick? The pain, prana, and purpose, and why you chose these, and what's so important about those as we think about being the CEO of our own well-being.
Well, it's kind of the last part of the method where you kind of dive deeper. I mean, we've all experienced pain, but it's up to us. It's a choice. It's an active choice that we make if we want to let pain either define us and dictate our life, or choose to make it our greatest teacher for growth and evolve as a result of it. So I thought pain could be something that everyone could relate to. And it's an empowering way to look at pain. And prana is a bit different because not everyone, especially in the business world, unless they've done yoga, is not really aware of what prana is, which is a Sanskrit word for breath and life force or life energy. I actually named my corporate wellness company Prana Naz because prana is vital to our life and, all about optimizing that energy to be fully engaged at work and in life. So prana is very meaningful to me personally, and would love to have people understand more what it is and how it flows through us. And the quality of our prana is dependent on the choices we make. So for example, if we're stressed or, do things that like we're not taking care of ourselves, our prana can become blocked and our energy and breath and life force becomes compromised. And so when it's flowing freely, then we're energized to be fully engaged at work and in life. So it's very important to have free flowing prana. And then purpose, our drive for meaning. I mean, we all are seeking it most of the time if we haven't found it already, but I tried to approach purpose from a more approachable perspective, which we all know about purpose on the bigger level of your life's purpose, why we're here, what is our life's message or mission, which is definitely something, that I believe in. And luckily, fortunately, I found mine, but it took me so much time, to find my passion and purpose, which I turned into my profession, Prana Naz. But not everybody knows that. And so I chunk it down to more manageable way to approach purpose, which is daily purpose, daily intention. What is your daily intention? And, approaching purpose from a smaller chunkable size piece. And so purpose is twofold in my book. And I just thought that was a great way to put all of, the master mindfulness, apply better choices, the A's, and then the P's all together in creating this map method to truly live, your best life through authentic self-discovery, which is all about mastering mindfulness, and then better choices, applying the better choices. And then lastly, the P's is all about purposeful growth in work and in life.
Yeah, it ties together so nicely. And Naz, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners before I ask you my last question? Anything else kind of related to the book?
I encourage, everyone to just take the power and the choice, make that choice to be the CEO of your well-being and take charge of all areas of your life so that you could truly live your best life, because it's really up to you. And just take that empowered and aligned action if you haven't already, and start today.
Beautiful. Great reminder. And then my last question for you is, the name of this podcast is Tranquility du Jour. And so I'm curious, how do you find tranquility in your everyday?
That's a great question. And I meditate. Every morning I do transcendental meditation, and that helps me bring peace and calm and clarity into my day and into my life. I try to take that with me throughout the day. And I think tranquility, calm, and peace are just so important for you to show up as your best self and really be able to respond from a place of confidence and intelligence and joy, rather than react from a place of, being irritable and just like not grounded, right? So being grounded and calm through my meditation practice really helps me show up as a better person every day.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Naz. I appreciate it. And congratulations on this amazing book. Beautifully done.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you invited me here today and had a wonderful conversation with you.
All right, so over in the show notes, you can find links to our guest on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, make sure you're connected on our TDJ Insiders Facebook group. I like to share resources, inspiration, make connections, and be part of our online book club where we are reading Get Over I Got It. Also, receive weekly love notes by signing up at KimberlyWilson.com/love notes. You'll get invites, inspiration, and more. You can follow along Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all at Tranquility du Jour, and a link to my seasonless, vegan, locally made, eco-friendly fashion line, TDJ by Kimberly. Well, thank you as always for tuning in. I hope you also are inspired to pause, breathe, and choose. Wishing you a gorgeous week ahead. Hope to see you on Sunday at TDJ Live. Namaste.